Hey everyone, you're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and here's today's comic. Die, 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 number 6. Eat my vegetables, eat my knife. Yeah, this is not a kid's comic. Skybound warns, just look at the cats, the beautiful, precious cats. They are not kidding. This is the darkest issue so far. You may notice I have a little new recording backdrop here. Look at the pretty lights, my illuminated keyboard. This is my laptop. There's Spidey. And I'm also kind of speaking in a refrained voice. It's in the wee hours of the night, and people are sleeping pretty close by, so I'm trying to get a recording done because I haven't done one in several days. Last Wednesday I got one comic. This is it. I didn't do a comic video because this is the only thing that I got. Everything was Marvel last week. And I don't buy Marvel because, well, let's not get into that now. It's day 14 of my Twitter lockout, for any of you that care. I have not heard anything back from Twitter. I have sent them a second appeal saying, yo, what's going on? There's people who actually do real offenses that get a slap on the wrist and are back in a few days. I'm infamous. I don't know. I don't think I did any offense. I showed you guys the tweets that I did from October. They're basically just citing examples. I'm not saying anything actually to people, and it's definitely not harmful. It's not attacking anyone. It's not discriminatory. It doesn't fall under the guidelines. It doesn't violate any of the guidelines they cited to me at all. But Twitter doesn't care about anyone who is not a progressive. So if you aren't progressive, you can rot in hell, apparently, on Twitter. Well, we'll see what's going on. I might have to actually delete those tweets just to get on. They may just put me into limbo. Yeah, it's pretty shitty. But at least I have now another example to cite for all those people, whether you don't believe that Twitter holds innocent people that don't follow their beliefs captive. There's an example to go against it, or if you are a person who does believe that, here's an example to support your ideas. So let's get on with the show. This warning, this is the darkest of the books so far. And if you're wondering why I'm recording here on my laptop, it's because in the darkness of the living room that I'm in with the dim lighting, I feel like it lights things up pretty well here. Oh, look at that. I can tilt my screen. I don't know what I'm doing. Getting all Zach on you here. So what's interesting about this book, if you've been following, one of the things I really like about this book is this first page. Bendis Superman has a bunch of junk and got Lois Lane's computer or Clark Kent's computer, and it's a bunch of little goofy sticky notes, and he thinks he's funnier than he is, and it's just nonsense, and it wastes a page. And I'm using Bendis as an example because if you watch my videos, he's someone who should be made an example of. And here you got these guys are doing indie comics, and they use the first page really well. What I like is this first page sort of sets up the story. Here we have, I'll just kind of go through it. Barnaby Smith wasn't always, let's start over. Barney Smith wasn't always a despicable scumbag. In his younger days, he was driven. Yes, and an erratic moral compass, but he was kind. It wasn't until he married that he found an unbridled sense of ambition. Her name was Colleen, but he doesn't speak up for her anymore. Nothing was good enough for Colleen. She needed a bigger house, a husband with a better job. She needed it all. No child could ever be good enough for her, so luckily for the world, she decided to have no children at all. Her time was spent pushing Barnaby to succeed by any means necessary. With Colleen behind him, his ambition grew and grew. He combed through the ranks of the law firm, making a partner in 3 years. It wasn't long before he turned his attention to politics and continued to climb the ladder in that arena. Some have said after losing Colleen, no other woman could measure up, and nothing made life worth living. This is why Barnaby now has such horrific views on the world and women in particular. But that would make him somewhat sympathetic, wouldn't it? Maybe? One thing is certain. Whatever good there was once in him has long since been allowed to die. And this is a trope that this is 6 issues and they're continuing it and it doesn't get old. And you know you're going to get this die page. And you know you're going to get that beginning page. But it really, so now that I've been reading, I'm on the 6th issue, I'm pointing this out because these pages are crucial to the overall story arc of this series and getting to know these characters. And particularly this Barnaby character and I believe her name is Connie. This girl. They're both congressmen in this fictional world where Congress has control of these dark assassins that kind of do their underworld bidding and help them control certain things that politics can't control. And here we see another woman who's lost it all. And what's interesting is you're starting to see in this book too a very Game of Thrones aspect. And I use that as an example not because Game of Thrones originated it, but it sort of is the most popular in the whole, this sort of backstabbing, diplomatic sort of quest for power. Game of Thrones has really made it. It's the biggest known. It's the thing that everyone's going to get the example of, and this book is really starting to show this with this insider dealings and internal politics within Congress of these various people trying to hold power, and it does it in a slightly different way, and it uses these assassins that are under the control of these various politicians, which you still, on issue 6, don't have a clear understanding of the infrastructure of how it all works, but you don't really need to. Here we left off with these two, this husband and wife team that, let me see this. If you remember, and they met up with Paul, or fake Paul, who's actually George, killed his brother. They almost died, and here they're all burnt to a crisp. They barely managed to get out. He got away, and now they're trapped in London, disavowed, and they run into a Bobby, and they just have some lines that there's no real reason to go over the lines. I do want you to read these comics. I don't want to just spoil everything. They get rescued, where they're like wondering what they're gonna do. This guy shows up. Basically saying he's here to take care of things and introduces himself, but now he's holding a knife behind his back, and you're just like, he's not holding it, it's like a knife, it's sheathed, but his hand's on the grip. So is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? But he's just cautious. We don't know. Fast forward, our scene change over to George as fake Paul. George is Paul's girlfriend, and he's, if you remember this, she found out and they had a fight and everything, and now he's tied her up, and this is a cleaner guy, and he's kind of going all over his ideas, and he's a little bit sick, and you're going to kind of get a sense why. As this comic goes on, and she's like tearing up. Let me give you an example of this little dialogue he's having. He's like, you know those crazy people that wanted their kids to be in the NBA so much that they started training them as a baby? Like how Tiger Woods' dads beat him until he was the greatest golf player ever. Our dad was like that, but with murder. Oh, honey, are you looking at me with sympathy? Look at this face. It's perfectly drawn. This story just gets more sad from here. I'm only getting started. And she's crying, but I don't think it's with sympathy at all. He's just like a total psychopath. He just doesn't read people. So here we go. The people that had the theory about there actually being 4 brothers were right, and they're named after the Beatles. And they talk about it's because their dad was an immigrant and he didn't really speak English, so he was a Beatles fan. So that's why the kids were such, and he was a killer. He ended up training them to be his little helpers, right? The problem is their dad was not a good person. Obviously, people that kill people aren't a good person. And one of the boys, so what happens when he starts to, I'm kind of losing here. So he's training the kids, but he won't let them kill. He just lets them watch. But what happens is one of the guys is like getting away, and they all jump on him and kill him. And so the dad is like, all right, you guys are ready. And he takes them out one at a time to train them and teach them to kill, right? But one of the kids, naturally, he's not a cold-hearted killer. So he does what his dad says and expects, but you can see him looking away. And that causes a problem with the dad saying, some people can't do it. There's a line that they can't cross, and the kids are like, oh, okay, and he teaches them like, but the problem is these people, if they're not with us, they're against us. So he tells them that he can't be with us, and he has to be dealt with. And so he's telling the story. George, that is, volunteered immediately. And poor Ringo. And this is pretty disturbing when you actually read it and get the flow of the dialogue and stuff. And it's just murders. Like, these are kids. I mean, it's like 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids or whatever. Like, just disgusting. But it gets into what a degenerate psychopath this character is. And then the mom, she can't take it. She gets all depressed and everything. And the dad, guess what he did love his wife or whatever, and she's depressed and won't go out of it. And I guess he falls into depression with her because he blames himself. He realizes he's the one that caused all this problem. Yeah, you told your kids to fucking murder your son. Anyway, so they take over the jobs, because he won't work anymore. So these little kids are running around doing murders. The wife dies, so the dad slips into real depression and eventually kills himself. And then the kids kind of go their separate ways and take jobs with various governments and become the killers that we know today. And then we transition over to the other scene, if you remember. Good brother John came out from the last issue. He's the one that lived in the wilderness. We've got I can't remember I'm so bad with names on these characters. Nathan or Nathaniel, his daughter. If you remember, she's all with the guns, whatever. She's facing off with him with a gun, and he's like, "Are you gonna shoot me, little girl? Are you a burglar? Because I'm allowed to shoot burglars. I'm not a burglar. I'm a friend of your dad's. You could be lying, Dad." And so that's kind of a cute little scene. And she's like, "Shh, don't tell my dad." So let's get past this. Basically, he's the one that kind of like recruited to get him. He needs a favor, and he pulled him out. So they go back to Connie. I believe her name's Connie. To her office. They're sitting in the dark and they're talking about various stuff and, you know, schemes that are going on. Again, I'm not going to spoil every detail. You should read these books yourself. These are recommends. I love this series. And it's the machinations that are going on. I really enjoyed seeing kind of how the plot and people playing each other. So she gets Paul to show up, because remember, Paul works for her, but that's actually fake George, or sorry, fake Paul. That's a real George. And he shows up and, oh, what's going on? He doesn't know that John, his brother's there. John, hey, what's going on? Hey, good to see you, Paul. Blah blah blah. Okay, you know, small talk. Blah blah blah. He leaves, and it's like, okay, he's gone. John. Yeah, Nate, you were right to be suspicious. That's not Paul, that's George. So, the only reason they got him was to verify their suspicions. And just when you thought this book was dark enough, and the kids fucking murdering their own brother, and this book is full of despicable people. Like, seriously, there's no bright spot. Like, you kind of want to say John is, I mean, he lives out in the woods, he's trying not to kill, like, but even he's a cold heart. I mean, there's nobody in this book that's just like a shining star. If it wasn't done so tongue-in-cheek, this would be like a miserable book. And this is the darkest of them all because it kind of isn't done tongue-in-cheek. You kind of like pull back the curtain and see the underbelly, and it's just like, oh, here we go over to Barnaby. Take a look at that shot. Nice. Just taking a shit. Dude, when you eat on the toilet, that is disgusting. And chocolate milk with spaghetti while you're shitting. And just the pathetic grossness of this guy, this character. And he's a senator, right? So he's got a lot of power, and it's just... It's interesting how. Anyways, I'm not gonna go into that. So, if you remember, Paul is secretly working for this guy. They're doing the whole double dealings, and like I said, there's that Game of Thrones, you know, people playing each other, tricking each other, and backstabbing and all that stuff for power. And he's surprised, like, what the fuck, my brother's still alive, what, you know, and you're supposed to take care of that. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I am, and all this stuff. And then more examples of just how sick this book is. He's like, this guy is a cold-hearted killer, right, too, but he still kind of had, like, a sense about him. He's like, so what does that mean for Paul? And John's just like eating. You can see. And the artist does a really good job here, the facial expressions. I mean, you can just see, like, eating or talking while chewing. He's just like, oh, Paul's dead. That's the only way. Must have made the switch during the action, or the auction, when he caught up on the roof, and blah, blah. He's just kind of going through it all, like, not phased. You know, trust me, we go back, search that castle, we'll find Paul's body. Jesus. And he looks up and he's like, sees that he's like troubled. George always was a fucking asshole. And you know, he's still troubled. It's okay, man. It's okay. This is the guy who should be being consoled, right? His brother's dead. He's consoling the other guy. We'll kill him soon. And you're just like, man, the story is just messed up. And so Connie gets back to her house. She has run-in with a neighbor. I guess takes care of her cats while she's away. And she's like bitching at him. Look at this old hag. Disgusting. It's like, come on. She shows up. And she's, you know, crazy cat lady. I thought I smelled pussy. But she's not actually talking about the cats. Guess who's waiting for her? With a gun. So they're facing off, and he's basically kind of revealing his plan to her finally. It's like, look, we've been kind of working together and tolerating each other for a long time, even though we don't like each other. But, we knew this time was going to come. There's only room for one of us. And he's basically playing his cards now. Go back. George wants some alone time, so he sends the cleaner away. He's cleaning his gun. He's talking to the girl more. And he's just like, I can't help but think you love my brother. And in the end, we're really not all that much different. Because he really likes her. So, it's like, dude, you just killed her boyfriend. And you think now you're hitting on her. Besides, after today, I'm going to be famous. I've always wanted to kill a president. So, there's a big crisis going on in the comic. They mentioned potential of nuclear war. And so, he's been assigned to assassinate the president. We'll see how that works out. And that's the final page for this issue. I really, really like this book. You kind of have to read the whole thing. I mean, me skimming through it and kind of telling you what happens. It gives you a sense to know what the plot is, but it doesn't give you the feel of it. Speaking of which, I just wanted to comment real quick. This book has a letters page. Bravo for Skybound and these guys doing a letters page. This is something that all comics should have. And they have people criticize the book in the letters page too, and I like that. It's not just a bunch of shilling. I really like that, and I like the interaction with the fans. Every comic should have this. And it's a lot of books are going away, especially the big books like Marvel and stuff, and it's just like, come on. I bought this book because it wasn't advertised. It was something that they just threw out there. Stores got a shipment, surprise to them, the day before the new comic book day. It's like, here you go, here's the books, and it was based on their Oblivion Song orders. That no one had any idea this book was coming out, and I love that. So there was no advertisements. It's a complete shock. You come into the store on Wednesday and you're like, what's this book? And that's what got me to buy this book. And the stories inside have kept me coming back. It's very entertaining. There's world building. You're interested in what's going on in this world, why things are like this. You're interested in these various assassin characters and the machinations and scheming of the various power plays. This book is the darkest of them all, and you do have to obviously be able to handle the gore, which is done purposefully. It's gratuitous, but it's done to have this certain feel and tone. I can't recommend. I don't want to say I can't recommend this book enough. It's not stellar, but it's really good. I definitely do recommend this book. If this stuff all looks, if everything you're seeing goes, I'm okay with that. Like, yes, I guess I could say I can't. This is a fun book, even when it's dark. The action and the pacing is just on. These characters you just kind of want to know more about, even though they're kind of scumbags when it boils down to it. So, anyways, I did want to make a video, get something out there. It's the only book I had last week. Hope this Twitter thing gets resolved. It's kind of put me in a rut. That and the holidays, everything I haven't done any videos. Sorry for this being a long one. Hopefully, me trying to be quiet doesn't make for a boring sounding video and no enthusiasm. Check out Die 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 if you haven't. I'm assuming this will be collected in a trade here soon if you don't want to go back and find the back issues. But yeah, thanks for watching.